Hey everyone, my name is Dave Nixon and welcome back to another episode of the Peak and Flow podcast. Today I'm going to go a little bit rogue. Usually I've got some lovely notes here that I go off in a structure and a subject and content. However, today I'm just going to go a little bit rogue, I guess. Probably a bit more similar to my earlier podcasts through the mood prep era where I'll pick a subject and pull it apart for 10 minutes. This is a little bit different. This is something that I've seen, and I understand why, like presenting subjects. Let's talk about, give it context. Within the fitness space, there being good and bad, right? Look at good and bad foods. This is good food, this is bad food. That's a bad way to approach it. That is also a good and bad approach. So it's bad to approach foods as good and bad. Can you hear that? There's like, it's meta. The problem that we're pointing to, we're doing the exact same thing, but we're just going meta and saying that's a bad approach. Now, I'm not saying that it's a good approach to go, this food is good and this food is bad. What I'm suggesting is that it's not as simple as that. In my experience, people grow and develop through stages, whether it be as coaches or as human beings in general, like through adult development, which is mapped out through many different psychologists' bodies of work, through Robert Kegan to Piaget and so forth. And so we see that these people, we expand our awareness, we expand our perspectives, we change our meaning, we grow wisdom, if you want to call that, as we grow up. Now, literally maturing in the sense of our worldview. And so my experience is that comes in relation to health as well, both food and exercise and so forth. And so let's talk about the black and white approach, which is good and bad, all or nothing. It's actually called rules and roles. And it's actually a really, really important stage of development when we look at our health. We need to know this is good, this is bad, this is black, this is white to begin with. We need to know the inverted commas correct way to do a lat pull down before we can learn more dynamic type movements of a kipping pull up or so forth. And then people would say they're cheating pull ups. It's like, well, that's like calling a push press a cheating press. It's a different exercise with different intent. Now, both of those things can be executed exceptionally poorly. However, the body is designed to function and move as one unit. It's designed to be able to move both statically and dynamically within its body parts. There's more to it than simply just going cheating or not cheating when we look at something like a kipping pull-up. A bit more nuanced and layered than that. However, good and bad, black and white, rules and roles is just an earlier stage. Here's an example for you. My guess is that if there was a lady and she was going shopping, right, in the supermarket, and she's going shopping for her family and she's got her cart and she stops at the margarine that she usually gets and she pauses for a moment and she gets the low-fat, salt-reduced margarine. Now, we can say like margarine's horrible for us and we shouldn't have it and there's all these other concerns and that's not the best thing you should be doing. But for this woman, that may have been the first time it came online for her to value her health. It wasn't a good option when we zoom out, but for her in that moment, she had been existing and living in a particular way with not a real focus or value or priority when it came to understanding nutrition and how food actually affects her body and her mind and her relationships and so forth. But that is an exceptionally necessary and important stage where she, for potentially the first time ever, paused, stopped for a moment, thought about it, and grabbed a slightly better alternative. That is crucial. That is a fundamental like leverage. When we hit a golf ball, right? And where the face of the club hits the golf ball, if it changes a millimeter, it's nothing. But down the fairway, it's completely different. It's a completely different trajectory. And so that's a millimeter. But otherwise, the person just goes and hits the same groove. And so these millimeter changes later on as well, but are just so fundamentally important. And rules and roles is the main stage that we all start at. This is good food, this is bad food. This is, go hard in your workouts, go hard, go home, all or nothing, all of this sort of stuff. It's all black and white language, and it's usually where we start. And that's okay, but we grow up and we mature. Now, commonly what can then happen, as people mature to a later stage, they then can shit can the rules and roles stage, not realizing that the rules and roles gave them the platform to be able to see more, to be able to build on their health and understanding of themselves, both mentally, physically, socially, and environmentally. And so we need to look at these stages as all necessary stages. Rules and roles, let's call it sustainability, flex and flow, if you may, and then later on really looking at full adaptability, right? Specificity as well, of being able to be specific, but we see in these sort of stages where people first understand what the hell is even a macronutrient. What's a protein, what's a carb, what's a fat? And then as the person continues to build that base, they're able to really start, same with training, not just nutrition, same with communication, right? Be a beginner. It's okay. That's where you're starting. You need to start there. You can't skip the work. That's the work. That's the stage where you're at. Have you met yourself where you're at? Have you really met yourself where you're at? Where you at? This is a mixtape. Where you're at with relation to food, nutrition, movement, training, just where you're at. That's okay. That's just where you're at. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you can meet yourself there at that stage, then you can take the next step. And then the next step. And then the next step. But if we don't meet ourselves where we're at, we're trying to take too bigger jumps, too bigger leaps, or we're shit canning earlier stages. It's just like the oak tree yelling at the acorn for not being enough yet. The acorn's a necessary stage. It'll become an oak tree if we give it time. It's the same for you. And so I guess the main crux of this podcast is probably a couple of things. One, there isn't a finish line. There is reference points, but there's no end date to this, no end point. If you allow yourself, you will continue evolving and developing and learning and getting fitter and stronger or healthier, whatever that may be for you. Because at the end of the day, if we're always measuring strength by a barbell, there'll come a day where you won't lift a heavier number. And people that are so hell-bent on, inverted commas, results, I keep on saying inverted commas because I'm so used to being a podcast, not just on video, but for results, it's like, how are you measuring those results? Because if it's just weight loss, if it's just barbell, if it's just a metric, a number that's always meant to go one way, what happens when that because the day will come, what happens when that stops going there? And is there a condition? I am happy when X. It's this whole flip, right? It's not I'm at peace when everything falls into place. It's everything falls into place when I'm at peace. And our ability to be able to shift that and to be like, I'm allowed to be where I'm at. It's okay for me to be like, this is good and bad. As I learn what good and bad food is, as I allow myself to have some flexibility with my intensity with my training, as I allow myself to slow and be deliberate with my language and how I'm communicating, as I allow myself to feel the emotions that we as a human being are fundamentally designed to experience. There's no faults in that. Is it contextually appropriate is a whole nother conversation. But in that human experience, right? Mental health, physical health, social health, and once again, environmental health, to be able to see that these all develop through stages. And maybe I go through the stages in a later podcast in greater depth for you, but I guess once again, to round it out, is to remind you that the stages that you build on, you need to know black and white. You need to know rules and roles to be able to develop from there. You cannot develop past there without it. It's necessary stage. Just like the stage you're at now, it is a necessary stage for the next one. And on that note, team, I'm done. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this podcast, it would mean the world to me. If you'd pass it on or share it with someone else that you think would also enjoy it, you can grab a copy of my book, Money Yourself, anywhere online that sells books. You can find out about our retreats and our events all in the show notes below or online, otherwise at peakandflow.com.au. But that's me done. I'm out. Until next time, peace and pizza. I'll see you soon.